Welcome to the Megidramon gameplay guide. First off, we're facing off against Barbamon, which is a matchup that I pretty much haven't really played as much against before, so this is going to be interesting. Two purple decks going at each other. We are going first. Initially, I was contemplating on digivolving into the EX4 Gilmon by paying the 1 memory, but I was like, you know what, maybe it's better if I just hard drop the Gil X afterwards to give the opponent 3 and search for some pieces that I need to continue to climb up. But then I found a wisdom training off the top draw, so I decided to give the opponent 2 so that I can take my time with it a little bit more. What I ideally want to do is then push out the Gilmon in the following turn, and then I can digivolve into Gil X and get a lot of value off of it by drawing and searching at the same time. So we're going to continue to go ahead and do that, and I can fetch and pick in whatever pieces I want pretty much. I'm deciding between the War Growl and the Growl X, and I decided to grab the Growl X just because it's the lower end. I already have both pieces in my hand, and now I'm just trying to find ways to see if I can continue to bridging on. I'm trying to see if I want to digivolve into the Growlmon for 3 cost, put the opponent to 1, or just use Wisdom Training and just go all out, because the feeling is that they have double wisdom training on their end. They can pretty much climb up very fast in the following turn, so I just felt like might as well just keep climbing and keep doing things as much as I can in this particular turn, gain the floating capability with Growl X by drawing 1 and trashing 1. But it is kind of tricky because at this point we don't have a whole lot of cards in our hand just yet, so our resources in our hand are fairly limited in terms of what we want to toss away. The other thing I'm being mindful of is that I know Barbamon tends to like to trash cards from your hand a lot, and with that effect being on, I'm also trying to be mindful not to toss away everything I don't need, or sort of like trying to juggle the resources from there just in case, because it is gonna matter later on too. But since I chipped away in their security, I thought it was fine, because I was like, okay, I can play a Gilmon back out if it gets deleted, which I'm not, really against, and I can always use the Digimon egg to grab anything that I have that's Gallant or Groundmon and its name back from trash afterwards. But it looks like we checked into the mat earlier there. And then, so I was like, okay, then let's just set up a Tocado right away, because we want to have a Tamer on the board, so then we can, have a memory setter to establish everything that we need to continue to play as much as we can, which is going to benefit us for the rest of the game for sure. Now they're going to keep climbing up into their Gesselmon, into their Marine Devimon, and it looks like they're going to go try and swing into our stack, which I don't mind as much, and they're going to play out a Siakomon too. So they're kind of trying to play a bit of board control, but that allows me to pretty much like get my undulation effects, which is pretty decent, because then I could then pretty much grab anything I wanted and then play out with Gilmon, and I can pretty much like choose on how I want to do this. I want to play the Gil X just so I can get a free search off of it. Ideally, it would be the new BT21 Gilmon, so then I can like trash 1 and draw 2 cards. But then that's totally fine, because afterwards I can rebuild the stack if I wanted to, or build in the back afterwards. Depending on what they do here, they're gaining a lot of memory and a lot of advantages and value. I decided to grab back my Gallantmon that I might be able to utilize later on in the game as well, just because it itself has rush. It can delete something like 13k or higher, and it can synergize and do some pretty nasty combos with Megidramon altogether if we ever want to as well. So they're going to keep climbing up into their stack, they're going to keep digivolving, and then they're going to keep making us choose if we want to trash a card from our hand or not. I'm just doing some memory calculation, and I just felt like them having that extra memory wouldn't matter too much per se. So I was like, okay, go ahead and gain yours and see what you can continue to do, just because I don't want to trash cards away from my hand. And I know Barbamon does tend to thrive when there's less cards in our hand, and I want to try to keep it as healthy as possible, especially when it comes down to this Ferrismon. I was pretty much understanding like, having 6 cards at that moment is kind of like the worst thing. But then here we're pretty much like forced to trash, so we're gonna toss away that Gallant anyways, and we're not gonna let them have that sweet spot of 6. Now they go into Barba, which they can pretty much randomly trash 1 from our hand, which is not the best thing, because this is gonna be very random. And they did take away our War Growl, which is the only level 5 we have at the moment to work with. So if we don't find one afterwards, we're going to be in really, really bad spot, because they're starting to go wide with their board 2, and eventually they can make a lot of attacks in one go. So we're going to continue to build in the back a little bit. I was saying like, does it make sense to build at the front just because I only have 3 memory, but I don't have any additional resources to really get much done outside in the battle area? And I was thinking, okay, can I make most of this Gil X? Can I pop their stuff? Can I kind of retain turn? Do I need to address the Siakomon and the Marine Devimon right now in this particular moment? So I felt like I didn't really need to. So that's why I decided to go chip with the Gale X. And because my other plan was actually, you know what? They have a memory setter. I'm just going to build my stack in the back. I am forgoing all my when digivolving effects at this point, so I'm gaining no buffs. But thankfully, I found the EX8 Wargrowl X, which will give me additional security attack +1. So then the next turn, my plan is to actually try to get into Megidra, swing 3 checks, and see where we're going from there and see if we can finish the game off. Just because I felt like I want to go for an explosive turn, I didn't really need to control the board particularly, just because I felt like they're not like at lethal range just yet. And once I get into Megidramon, I pretty much get to nuke the field anyways. So there's no need to really control it in this particular moment. I'm just getting ready. And next turn, like I said, I'm going to come up with an explosive stack and do a bunch of stuff. Then I'm going to start chipping our security away, so we could actually might find some value for ourselves, which it won't be the worst thing either. And they're trying to see how they want to play this out. Barbamon doesn't really necessarily want to swing all the time, except for like Marine Devimon, unless if they get to play float bodies or draw cards or trash cards, but there's nothing on our board that they can really interact with. And this is really good because now we find a purple memory boost that we can pretty much utilize in the next turn as well. And we're pretty much really just sitting here waiting for the right moment. You guys may have noticed, like I did mention earlier, juggling like your cards and like the multiple copies if you have in your hand is fairly important. I will admit, in this particular game, I think I got a little bit lucky because I didn't trash the Megidramon I had in hand. I kept 2 in hand, sort of by accident. And it actually mattered because sooner or later, something big may actually make or break the game. The opponent knows we're going to get into Megidra the next turn. So they're trying to find a way to pretty much maybe get rid of it in our hands, or maybe force us to trash, maybe get into another Barba. But this is where they go into Ravemon burst mode, which is crazy. And honestly, that's why I was saying earlier why it actually mattered having 2 Megidras, because if that was our one and only copy, that would have been over. We wouldn't been able to like get into our stack. We're gonna have to find it all over again, and then the next turn we won't be able to nuke the board, and if we can't nuke the board, the opponent pretty much swings out and wins from there. Wow. Talk about some crazy luck, guys. I did not expect that at all. And I have to admit, like I said before, I got pretty lucky because I actually chose to keep it in my hand throughout the entire time. And now in hindsight, as you learn, I guess when you play against something like this and you know that it might pitch away like an important card, eventually try to keep a multiple copy just in case if they do toss it away, if it's gonna like disrupt your turn, because Barbamon can be pretty deadly with all that hand trashing, which pretty much doesn't let us play anymore. But now we have a lot of memory to work with. I'm just going to hard evo into Megidramon for the 4 cost. And now I'm going to pop the memory boost, gain a little bit memory. And I intend to basically swing all their security, blasting all the 3 checks. And nothing's going to be able to stop us. So with that going through, we're going to self-delete and nuke the board. We're going to gain a bunch of on-deletion effects while at it as well. The only downside that we don't gain is the effects of the X-antibody inheritables to gain even more memory, because our Digimon is already deleted and it's no longer on the board, so we can't gain those, which is kind of unfortunate, but at least we still get to gain the new gain memory ones as soon as we delete it off of the BT21 Growlmon and the Gilmon. Now I get to play out something that is pretty much high cost at this moment off of Megidramon's effect and grab something off with Gigimon as well. So I'm going to grab the Wargrowl, and I'm just counting the amount of cards in both player trashes. If I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I have the Rush Gilmon, and with more than 20 on both players' side in total already, we can easily use this to finish the game off, and there's pretty much nothing that can really stop us. I'm not too sure what kind of aces they play, because I have seen Darkdramon aces and Gulmon aces, but I'm not entirely sure how they can interact and stop us. But at this point, I really don't have any other choices. Being able to gain the rush allows me to pretty much attack. So I'm pretty much going to go into Wargrowl, and as I attack for game, and I can go with Tocado, I can Digivolve into another Megidramon, which has the on-deletion effect. Let's just play out a Gallantmon just in case. And we're going to see if they have any response. But looks like they don't, and we managed to take that game. This game, we're facing off against another pretty interesting deck, which is Shakamon, which we haven't really much played against since the beginning of EX6. And this is a pretty tricky deck too. Journey to the West with all the Digicrossing they have. I know that Shakamon can just like give everything security -1, which is a pretty good counter against us, just because we try to capitalize a lot of like ginormous checks. But then their Shakamon gains like security +1 in reverse thanks to getting security -1, which is really cool. So we're going to go ahead and see how this goes. We are going first, contemplating if I want to Digivolve into Gilmon for the 1 cost as usual, but I felt like, you know, having the option card, the Digimon I designed, just to ramp and search, not like search, but just to draw and just to set up the cards I want in the trash so that I can use this delay for later on is going to be really beneficial. I know the opponent tends to drop a lot of these level 5s and gives us a decent amount of memory to work with. And because of that, we want to actually utilize a very key important piece in this matchup, which is actually the EX8 War Growl X, because it allows us to delete the level 5s preemptively. They go into Venusmon just to slow us down a little bit, which I don't mind at all because I have enough options in my hand to sort of like give them 1 memory to work with only, and which gives me a better setup moving forward. This is where I'm gonna go and think about the next turn. I have pretty much my full line. I can push out the Gil, and I want to Digivolve into Gil X and really get a lot of value off of it, where they're going to continue to hard play level 5s over and over again, which I actually noticed that is probably because they have ace cards, level 6 ace cards that are angels or yellow related, and that is why, again, it's important that we need to get into the War Growl X to preemptively delete that. The Venusmon actually doesn't bother me that much or in this matchup at all. Just because Megidramon does gain that security attack +1, that means we can't really use when attacking or when digivolving effects, or nor we can attack into her. But again, like I said, it's fine because Megidramon is a end of attack effect. And with that, we get to pretty much blow up the board anyways, and what never mattered for us. So we're gonna pretty much climb up, like I said, all the way through our stack, through the X antibody versions as we go as well. And then being able to go into the War Growl X is one of the things that I really like and synergizes with the delay option card, the Digimon I designed, because we get to pop something, and with that we can actually evo into the Megidramon from our trash for free. And that gives us the capability. We don't always really want to go into the BT21 for the sake of like attacking with it. It's nice to have as well, which is a very important core of the game plan, but having both choices gives us that diversity on how we want to switch our gears too. Now by going to Megidramon for free, we can pretty much swing 3 checks into their security with massive DP, and we have protection from bouncing as well, which actually matters quite a bit here, because you guys notice they actually play a Seraphimon that bounces too, and that pretty much gives us the immunity around it as well. And then now as we check into 3 security, we hit a Odin's Breath, which we get -3k, doesn't matter too much, but we also hit into Crimson Blaze, which is rather unfortunate because it stops us from being able to play a Digimon. So now that we're 1 turn later, and not being able to play anything back from trash is not going to be the best thing. That means we can only really resolve the on deletion of War Growl Inheritable to trash their top security, which is why the I believe that's the Muchomon got trashed. That way we still deal 4 total damage, but we also get to grab a piece back with Gigimon. So at this point I was like, okay, well, since I can't play anything back, I pretty much need to set up for the next turn. Now, the only dilemma I have at this moment is it would be nice if we can just play like one of those option cards to search and set up that way instead, but I don't have purple sources. Now, in a perfect world, normally I would have the Iomon on the board already played off of the effect of Megidramon, so then I'll be able to use those purple option cards and sources, but here I didn't want to give the opponent too much to work with either, so I'm just going to hard drop the Gilmon here in the end, which honestly, arguably speaking, I could have even just hard pass, not to just give them a 2, because we start at 3 memory anyways, and knowing that they would digicross into level 5s like that, it pretty much perfectly puts us back to a 3 memory, so that we're pretty much kind of like not doing too much of that Gilmon that we played out, if that makes any sense. Whereas we kind of utilized it as a rookie to digivolve in the back. But I was okay with that too, because I kind of had the understanding or like kind of foresight thinking that it was going to get removed one way or another, which is why I kept the calling from my hand. But again, looking back, calling is one of our own self-deletion spells that we can use to really synergize with some of our effects, like being the other Megidramons or other effects that we want to just self-delete and not have to attack necessarily at times. So that's the only kill spell that we have. And yeah, but that's totally fine. I managed to grab the Gil X there, and then I decided to re-climb all the way up by setting up a purple memory boost, and then the next turn I'm ready to go, because all I need to do is deal with that Gokumon And the opponent hasn't really done damage to us just yet because they're having trouble probably gathering their rookies or gathering any momentum for them to get into Shakamon. They might go into Venus again, which it doesn't look like they have, so they're going to drop down another level 5, giving us 4 memory to work with. They do stun down our Takado, so then we can't really suspend an attack and kind of like when the turn ends with it, which is fine for us too, but it looks like they decide when to stun down our Analog Youth here in the end, just to prevent us from gaining additional memory for the turn. Like, it doesn't really matter for us to, just because now we can easily just climb up. We're gonna go into Growl. Sad that we have to like mill the double purple scramble, which is really useful in this deck generally too. But either way, we're just gonna climb up into the Growl X, gaining the on deletion effect there as well, using the boost, going into War Growl, pretty much repeating the exact same combo with our previous like big swing turn. And we're milling so much, we're drawing so fast as well, that you guys can see that we're almost pretty much decking ourselves out so quickly just from climbing into 2 stacks. Now that we got rid of at least one of their level 5s, we have to find a way to get rid of the other. And again, this is where the exact same combo is going to repeat itself. We're going to gain memory off all the stacks, and then now, surprise, surprise, we're going to go into Megidra for free, pretty much just like that. And then with Megidramon, we can pretty much go for an attack and repeat the same thing. But I am trying to be careful in playing around any potential aces. Although we've seen Seraphimon, I believe Valkyrie Ace as well. The other, they could play almost any like yellow level 6 aces, which we have no idea about. I think the other play I could have maybe was just Digivolve into Gallantmon and then possibly go into Crimson mode, but I think the Crimson mode was in trash as well. So that was another possible avenue if I had those pieces. But that's okay, because I actually figured out a way right here when we get to showcase a little bit of the usage of the new promo Gallantmon, is that you want to have a Digimon with 13k or higher on the board. And that allows us to reduce this play cost. And thanks to having so many cards in the trash at this point, which is well over 30, and it's only a 12 cost, different to the BT21, and as long as we have that number, we play this guy for free. Now, the reason why I play this guy for free is that so I can delete my own Megidramon without necessarily attacking, playing around any potential aces. And then the War Growlmon in Herbo, just like before, is going to trash their security, putting them down to 0, and we're playing around any potential bombs too. Now, I know we pretty much ran through like quite a number of bombs earlier in the first swing of checks, but here now, I'm going to think and decide what I want to play out off of the Megidramon's on deletion effect. I get to do a couple things. I get to play something off of Megidramon, I get to play something off of the Growlmon X floating ability that I got, and I get to grab a piece back with Gigimon too. So I was contemplating on playing like 2 Rush Gilmons at first, so then I have more than enough swings. But again, I remember we gotta deal with this level 5, and that's the whole purpose of doing this entire play. And it may seem a little bit like extra convoluted or a little bit extra, but the whole point is so that we can go into the War Growl X and then finish the game with a Gallant that has Rush. This game, we're facing off against Buildamon, which is rather of like an Imp Rush version as well, which is pretty interesting because they can ramp up very quickly, play a lot of Impmons, and actually set up a lot of value. This is finally the time when I actually said for the entire gameplay guide that I was always going to Digivolve into Gilmon for 1 cost, but finally did it because I felt like, okay, you know what, I don't have other cards to really want to follow up with, so I want to take it slow a little bit and try to top deck and see what I have afterwards in the following turn. And yeah, take it slow. But you guys can see, they mill pretty quickly. They go for the Imp Rush attack and they mill 3, mill another 2, and already there's like Rivals Barrage and with the delay options set up on there as well. Now they're establishing their Iron Makos to pretty much find other pieces they need and then continue to mill and mill. Wow, EX2 Buildamon is still fantastic because it gets to play an Impmon back on the trash, and with the Impmon being played out, they can play another Iron Mako. Look at that crazy setup in 1 single turn. So now we're going to just go ahead and push up. We're going to go into our Gil X. Might as well just climb through our stack just because we have the resources. We need to cycle ourselves as well and start drawing cards, start trashing cards. It's like the battle of who can trash faster, right? Either Buildamon mills faster or Megidramon right here, which is a very interesting matchup and pretty cool because once we play into effects and go into zones where later in the stage of the game where both players' trashes really count, I get a lot of value off of it, especially you guys can see with the War Growlmon. But in a pretty funny situation right here at this moment, because there's not a whole lot of cards in the trash just yet. I decided to just swing with it anyways, so that I want to get into my first Megidra stack and just start cycling and start doing things. Again, like I said, start digivolving and try to get as much momentum as possible while I can. And I know they kind of gain memory off the Ayamako as well, so I was like, okay, you know what, if I delete myself here, maybe it'd be okay, but you know, unfortunately we check into another Ayamako that's going to gain them a lot of memory at the start of main. So even with floating those bodies back out, we're going to give them quite a lot to work with, which is a little unfortunate, but that's okay. Again, like I said, because I felt like, okay, next turn, if they don't deal with our 2 bodies that we play out back, which one of them is going to be the War Growl, and then I'm going to pretty much play out another, which is off of the Growl X, which is going to be the Gil, and then really resolving to grab the Megidramon as the last thing I do off of the Digimon Digi-8 card there. Now, I have 2 bodies ready to go. Next turn, if they don't do anything about it, we can pretty much just go for lethal. But they have their start of turn, which they can play out a Impmon there, and then with that, they can pretty much, they can't attack with it. So I wonder how they're going to climb up. And I realized they don't really play level 5s, or maybe they don't find level 5s. We can see that they have a Witchmon level 4. But I think the whole build really focuses on the lower end. Either way, they have strategies and cards to keep milling again and again, and they have a lot to work with anyways. They can easily just warp into any Beelzemon if they need to, but they do need to reach the 20 card trash at the moment. So it looks like they're going to go for a Death Slinger and just delete our War Growl, because they know it's going to pretty much like do something and like pretty much like finish the game off with having those extra bodies. And now we start at 3 again, and I'm pretty much repeating the same thing a lot in these games. I'm just going to Gil X. After Gil X, I'm going to go into Growl, and then after that, I'm going to go into Growl X if I can. But unfortunately, when I mill, since the new Growlmon forces the opponent to trash their top card of their deck as well, and that means they get their mill effects, which is why the Blastmo being milled would end up popping us, and we pretty much lost our stack right there. Although I was like, okay, this is not too bad, at least I have a rookie ready to go in the next following turn, so I can just give them as low as possible. And I'm not too against not having a Digimon on the board, just because, again, like I said earlier, not giving them extra memory to work with off of Ayamako is pretty good. And then the next turn, we pretty much threaten lethal anyways. We have a boost to work with, we have wisdom training, we can easily climb up into a Megidro if we need to all over again. And the opponent only has 2 memory. They have to find a way. They are milled up pretty a lot in their trash. They set up pretty much at 20, so maybe they can go for like some crazy combos to like trash all of our security in one go. That's one thing with Beelzemon, which is technically better than Megidramon, because they can trash a lot of security, whereas Megidramon actually does the physical checks. And you guys saw from the first stack when we did, we gave them tamers, we gave them like possible like, you know, options where like, you know, Wyver's Barrage and like Deathslinger, you know, these cards can delete us and pretty much like counter us, and then we won't be able to use like our end of attack delete everything on the board, whereas we just lose our whole stack. So I think the opponent's trying to see how they want to kind of commit to this board. I think they can work pretty much into any Beelzemon they have in that trash at this moment, and they could either further do more things with it too. So it looks like they wanted to use the Ayamako, which pays the 4 costs, to go into the start at Beels, and the start at Beels is gonna pretty much like stack a card off the other Ayamako, and then now they're gonna mill the 4 off of that effect and pretty much gain even more. They set even more delay options here. Holy crazy, look at that. More Rivals Barrages too, and we see the Beels X there. They don't have 30 just yet. They're gonna go for 2 checks. Oh, I gotta say, this was certainly lucky for us, because if that first check went through and it went for a second check, they could have gone into a Beels X if the Beelzemon survived, and then they would have trashed the rest of it, and maybe they've been able to gain enough memory to sort of like find a way to go into like blast mode, unsuspend, and finish the game off there too. I think that was kind of like their intention, which because they can trash like a ton of security on our side. Pretty much like they have over 30 at this point, I'm pretty sure. So thank you, Gallantmon, that protected us. And that's the downside with the warping Beelzemon, is because you don't rack up enough DP. Security tends to be pretty strong, especially with Megidramon. You know, Megidramon has 13k, so it can pretty much pop a lot of things. So it looks like they end with a EX2 Beelzemon here. They're not going to further trash any more cards, because I think they're going to be decking themselves out, which they are running through it faster than we are at this moment. We're thinning out ourselves too, but I think they're trying to play into a potential blast mode ace at this point. So by having that Beelzemon is exerting that pressure. So we got to find a way to actually get rid of that Beelzemon before they go into blast mode. So I'm going to continue to digivolve up as much as I can, rack up the same inheritables, repeating pretty much everything you guys are most familiar with and seeing through this whole gameplay guide. If anything, if you guys learned anything, it's all about Gilmon into Gil X, Growlmon into Growl X, War Growl into not War Growl X this time, because I felt like, you know, I'm going to be doing a ton of checks. They only have 2 security left anyways. Having that extra check should not matter. Having the protection and having the DP buff shouldn't matter for us anyway. So this is where we finally get to use the War Growl when attacking, and then pretty much digivolve into Megidramon from our hand for free. And it looks like they actually don't have a blast mode ace, because they would have actually used it right there. Because if they use it right there, then they would have like interacted with our stack and we wouldn't be able to do those checks, which is rather unfortunate, because now this gives us the opportunity to finish off with Gilmon. And you guys can see it. I think, yeah, there is the blast mode ace. Oh, so close. Don't forget to grab the Destined Partners playmat and the status counters on the AVAULT store, which are perfect accessories to help assist you guys while playing the game. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you in the next video. And this is AVAULT signing out.